we're coming up on a year of this huge change, this huge transition and transformation of
Mm-hmm.
something I never thought I would have to endure
Mm-hmm.
because all my life, coming from a traditional South Asian culture and family, I was brainwashed into thinking that, like everyone else, that marriage is the ultimate destination. Marriage is what defines you.
So I have my lovely friend and neighbor with me today. And today we're going to be doing a little bit of storytelling. She has been so kind to want to be open and share her experiences. And we'll kind of just see where today goes. But I definitely want to dig into your recent relationship experience. How did we meet? So we both live in the same building. We're here in Portland.
Yes.
And it feels a little, what's the word?
Fortuitous.
Yes, fortuitous. That's always the
Yeah.
word that you use. So I was down in the laundry room. We have one laundry room for our entire building, one washer, one dryer
Yeah.
for
Ah.
16 units. This is a constant point of annoyance for the both of us.
We text each other about the laundry situation when we don't see each other. Like, hey, have you done laundry lately? It's a mess.
Yeah. We've tried different hours of the day.
Yeah.
It seems to always be used. But anywho, so I was down there doing laundry. I think you came in to maybe get your mail or something.
Yeah, I came in to get my mail and
this was was it January? So I had just moved in that month. You had been here for a couple months,
Yeah.
right? And I mean, we're in a small apartment building. I think there's 16 units.
Yeah.
And it's
Approximately.
all women live in this building. And in the few weeks that I had been here, I had not one interaction with anyone, which surprised me just for how small it was. I thought I'd have more in passing, like hellos
Yeah.
and greetings. And you were the first person that
Eh,
actually seemed open to conversation. I think I had maybe walked by a couple people, but it was very much like coming and going, and no one really seemed super conversational.
yeah. No, I had the same issue when I moved in because I was like, hey, where's the world?
Yeah,
Where
yeah,
are my new people?
yeah.
And
Seriously.
your energy was very welcoming. I'm like, oh, this girl wants to chat, and I'm going to chat.
As I'm pulling out all my clothes out of the dryer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. And I think we just started chatting and introduced, said, hi, my
Yeah.
name's so and so. I'm in this unit and we were actually on the same floor.
Yes.
You're like literally 2 doors down from me. I was on this journey of self-discovery and single and really trying to kind of carve out safe place for myself in this point in my life. And I think you share with me that you were in a similar stage as
Mm-hmm.
well. So then we said, okay, well, we should definitely exchange numbers and hang out. And then our first little friend date, I think, was when we went to go get pasta, right?
Yes, right down the street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we went and had a little date night and
And then we came back to my place and stayed up till like midnight having chai and
yeah.
cookies.
Yeah.
Which is a tradition we're starting to have now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We need to do that again soon.
Yeah.
But we started chatting and kind of sharing our stories. And I know I kind of gave you a Spark Notes version of a little bit of my relationship history. And I think that stemmed from I think I shared with you maybe that I wanted to start a podcast. This is right before I started the podcast, and you were so supportive. And then you shared with me a little bit about your story and your journey that you've been on. So you've been in Portland. You're originally from Yakima, is where you spent your
Yes. Childhood was in Washington State.
Okay.
And further childhood and later adulthood was in Houston, Texas, where I lived the longest amount of my life. Finished high school there, college and grad school, and then I hit 30 and I went into this existential nightmare of going through chronic anaphylaxis, and that stemmed from being under constant pressure, living in a traditional South Asian environment in the suburb where everyone's doing the same thing, everyone's behaving the same way, everyone's accomplishing things right on time,
Mm.
including becoming doctors, lawyers, engineers, having 2.5 kids by the age of 30.
2.5.
2.5 kids by
Two
the
and a
age
half.
of,
She knows the average. She knows the
right.
stats.
All my friends were just starved to get married, and I
Mm.
was there just confused.
This is when you were 30.
This was when I
Okay.
was 30, and I hadn't, up to that point, I briefly dated people. I wasn't really into, pursuing anything serious, or it just didn't transpire for me, and like I wasn't broken up about it. It wasn't like an urgency within me to settle down, especially after the anaphylaxis episode that lasted half a year. A lot changed for me after that. I needed to get away. I needed to get away from my very strict, hardcore, rigid parents. Strict meaning they pressured me academically and professionally.
Are
And
you comfortable sharing? Don't need to give specifics,
that's
but like
okay.
just more kind of how you were brought up in terms of like what expectations were
Sure.
set, or what was expected of you in terms of like you mentioned like career, relationship status, marriage, kids or not. Like what were
Yeah.
those norms
Um,
for your upbringing?
yes. So, as South Asian immigrants, there's a pursuit of excellence, and you better have a damn good reason for coming to America. You know,
Mm-hmm.
if you're not going to prove yourself, what they call now the model minority myth. My father is a very successful person. I'm not going to give away what he does,
Mm-hmm.
but he's a very successful person, and him and my mom indoctrinated us towards, that intellectual materialism that comes with immigrant mentality of,
Mm-hmm.
upward mobility, and which is why I went to grad school. I mean, and honestly, this whole way of living kind of destroyed my mental health.
Mm.
Up to high school, I was fine. I did really well academically, even in college. I just pursued what I wanted. I mean, I had the pressure to pursue exactly what my father was doing until I just couldn't. I was majoring in that very field for a year
Through like high school and some of college you were on that
on that
focus.
path.
Okay.
Yeah, that he
Okay.
wanted me to be on.
Okay.
And for a year, I was in that program, in that major that he wanted me to pursue what he pursued.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work out for me. Like, I was doing okay, but I was miserable. And I looked toward my future, and, living and breathing doing that wasn't my version of
Wasn't
happiness.
bringing you
Or
joy.
no, not there was no sense of reward. And I I was also taking literature at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and I was also taking journalism at the time, and I had these really unique subjects which I was extremely passionate about. And I'd always been a fan of literature. The Great Gatsby is my soul language.
Aww.
So I went up to my parents. I'm like, I can't do this. It's making me miserable, and I am going to major in
Switch your major.
literature and journalism.
And this was sophomore year
This was
of
sophomore
undergrad?
year. Yeah.
Okay.
And they were really shocked at
Okay.
first and didn't understand. And they, as the oldest in the family, I have two younger brothers,
Okay.
siblings. Um, they thought I was setting a horrible example of not being the good older role model, or just taking on after them or him, my
And they
father.
communicated that to you?
They did. They
That
did.
was is not setting a good
No,
example.
yeah, and at the time when I was younger, I had a lot more attitude than I had now, that I have now. Um, I may have taken a little time to mature at the time, but I I stuck it out. I was like, nope, this is what I'm going to do, and either I'm going to go to college for this, or I'm not going to go to college at all. That was my ultimatum. So they had no other choice, and so my father was like, okay, well, if you have to be a literature and journalism major, you better be the best person do in this field. I'm like, okay, great. There's more pressure now, you know?
So much pressure. You can't get
yeah,
away from the pressure.
no. And after graduating college, I worked at a newspaper for a while.
Okay.
And it was a very enriching experience. It was hectic and kind of chaotic, and I was covering City Hall.
Okay.
You know, a lot of big political stories
Ooh.
at the time. And as a young 23-year-old, 24-year-old, I was just brand spanking new in this big world doing these things. And you know, when they would see the bylines of my stories in the newspaper, then they started to get it. Like, okay, she's actually
making a name for herself.
yeah, she's accomplishing something, even though it's not our path, but it is her path. So we'll just let her be and do her thing. And so yeah, I just kind of evolved into writing at that point, writing for publications, working on a novel. Um, and I went to grad school for furthering my journalism career.
So you're in the working world for, was it a couple years before you started grad school? Okay.
Yeah, a couple years. I was at the same newspaper those 2 years.
Okay.
And I just really wanted to expose myself further into what it would be like to be, you know, as a political journalist at the time.
Okay. So that's what you felt at the time your path was going to be.
Yeah, or I was entertaining it.
Okay.
I hadn't made up my mind about it. I just wanted to learn more about what it would be like and just sort of specialize in a field, because as a journalism major, you're told to not go back to grad school for journalism because it's the exact same program.
Oh.
You go back to study a particular subject matter. So it could be philosophy or political science.
Okay, to deepen your knowledge on that topic so you can be a journalist with that expertise.
Exactly.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
I was a journalism major for a hot minute in college, but didn't make it that far, so that's interesting. So then you went back and had your your graduate program be in
political science.
Political science. Okay.
And you know, I'm glad I did it, but it just didn't resonate with me at all. Even though that was a time politically where we were actually making progress as a country compared to where we are now.
Mm-hmm.
We had our first Black president, and it just felt like a different time compared to now. God, where are we now?
Absolutely.
So
we're in a strange world right now.
Yeah. I think intuitively it just wasn't, it didn't feel like my path. I still wanted to write, but I don't think I had made up my mind that I was grateful for the experience of going to grad school and studying this subject. I just didn't want to be a political journalist.
And you felt that pretty quickly, like after finishing grad school, it wasn't settling.
It wasn't settling because I had realized I loved to write, and I didn't want to always write about politics, you know. So when in my first job as a journalist at City Hall, that felt exciting for a minute because I was doing something grown up.
Yeah.
You know, and professional.
Professional.
Yes, quote unquote. And that's when I was starting to wake up to my creative side. You know, I kind of sort of shut it off after college and after majoring in literature. You know, I just sort of like, hey, I need to be part of the real world now. And, you know, creative people have nowhere to go, you know, except have hobbies. This was at that time. You know, creativity is not as commercialized as it is these days, thankfully. So yeah, I realized that the path of political journalism wasn't going to be for me, but I wanted to do something with writing. And I still, you know, I had to do something. So I started working in marketing for a little while.
Okay.
With career, I think, you know, like this is what I tell everybody is to just explore, try different things, because you're going to gain so much valuable insight, you know. And it adds to your perspective in so many layered ways.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I did that for a while, and that was the time when my community, my female friends, they were all in a rush, mad rush to get married. They just suddenly woke up one day and just wanted to, they just were hungry for men. This is late 20s,
Oh, late 20s. Okay.
mid to late 20s.
Okay.
And I wasn't quite there yet with myself. Like, I just was like, what happened overnight? Um, I was just a little shocked by everyone's just sudden need. Like, and all of us belonged to the same culture and tradition, and they were all getting pressured this at the same time. I was getting pressured by my parents to start thinking about settling down.
So all of you guys have your parents pressuring you, and your whole community is under this expectation.
Yeah, the whole community is after all these young women, pressuring them to settle down with the first person that's eligible that comes your way. And in this culture, you're not really allowed to date openly. You are introduced to suitors, and that is through social connections, through matchmakers, through friends of friends of friends. And oh my God, I mean, I don't know if you've ever watched these movies, but the guy comes over with his parents to your house with your parents, and that's how you have to communicate the first time. So
I've seen a matchmaker show. I can't remember what it's called. It's slipping my memory, but
is it the Netflix thing?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yes, and she's like a famous matchmaker within a specific community. It seems like.
Yeah. So it was really bizarre, and it's very unnatural because this is a very old system that is being brought from ages ago from the home countries.
So okay, so now you're out of undergrad. You were working in.
Yeah, this is I'm 26, 27 now.
So had you had any romantic relationships in the first like 6 years of your 20s?
Yeah, I did. Okay. I dated people without well, in the first half of my 20s, I dated people without any goal in mind. Okay. Just to get to know people.
And it was people that you had connected with in your own
people.
Okay, so not arrangements or pressures from your okay.
The arrangements didn't start until my late 20s. The reason why I went into anaphylaxis was when I turned 30, and that was when it was getting really out of hand for me to handle.
So was it one of those things where you just came home one day from work and one of your parents is letting you know that they've found someone they want you to meet
for you online? Yeah.
Really? Okay, so it kind of just
Yes.
Okay, so was there any conversation sitting down with you and asking you if you're ready to explore a relationship, or was it kind of just the expectation that you are and here's some matches for you?
Yeah, there were. My parents wanted to be reasonable about it, even though they were mad concerned about my future because I didn't follow the path that my dad was on, or followed his footsteps. When you're not becoming an engineer or a doctor or a lawyer as a female, it just seems like you're at bigger risk of not finding or like not being able to be independent, which is not true. You can be independent however which way you want, no matter what career you're choosing. And just because you are in those mainstream fields doesn't mean that you're going to be independent.
Of course.
Right? Like everything's not that binary. And I hate binary thinking. But my dad, he was the most concerned, and he was like, hey, we had a conversation. He said, it's time that you need to start getting serious about finding someone. That's the phrase, finding someone. We need to find you someone who's stable, successful, a good match for our family, for you. And, he's coming from, just good intentions from what he knows.
Right. It's a reflection, I'm sure, of how he was raised, too. I'm sure he went through this as well.
My parents met this way. They were neighbors, so they knew each other pretty well.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, it's not like how it is now, where I wish I had a neighbor who I was fancying, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they meet in the States or back in their home country?
Back in their home country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
This was, in the 70s.
Okay.
In that country.
Okay.
So, yeah, and I agreed to it because I wasn't in anything serious at the time personally. Like I wasn't hiding a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Which some of the people I knew that I grew up with, friends, had boyfriends who they were preparing to meet or introduce to the family. Yeah. And you never know how those things turn out.
So you're just doing your thing, working in
Yeah.
marketing, not dating anyone that you had met,
Yeah.
on your own. So here your dad and mom are expressing like we'd love to kind of maybe start helping you explore some options
Yes.
that we
Yes.
think are suitable for you. Okay, so you agree to
Yeah.
it.
And at first, everything's great. I meet some guys. They're, you know, not exactly what me or what I or my parents just, had in mind. Like, not that any of us were being picky. It was just not the right fit.
Yeah.
And whoever would introduce us, whether it was through one of my dad's friends or my mom's friends,
Yeah.
they always had the disclaimer like, "Hey, it's not going to work out the first time or the first 10 times."
Yeah.
And
Were the meetings happening like in your home, or was it like you go out to dinner?
yeah,
Is it like on a date? Are the parents there?
no. So after the first couple of times, my dad was like, "You know what? This isn't making sense to any of us because it comes down to the two of you. You two have to decide this." So, and I knew my parents would get there after a couple times, like
So the first couple times they were present.
they were
Okay.
present, but
Okay.
then they're like, "Go meet for coffee.
Okay.
We don't want to have to watch
Be
you
an
guys."
adult, do your
Yeah,
own thing.
just
Yeah.
so after that, I mean, after the first couple of declines, my parents started to get antsy because they thought that it would just happen like this. And it didn't. And suitor came after suitor, and it was like a whole parade of suitors. And I just didn't know what I was doing wrong here. And they were getting impatient too. They weren't totally blaming me for it because everyone I declined, they also ended up agreeing with me on that. So that was good,
Is this one of those things where once the suitor left, you and your parents would chat about
Yes,
whether or not you liked this person?
absolutely.
Okay. You're usually on the same page, so that's good.
Usually on the same page.
Okay.
This was just the first year though. Going into the
Oh, this
second
happened for a
year.
whole year.
This happened for a very long time. This happened for years. I became more and more defiant about what I actually wanted, and it helped me decide what I wanted. And that was when it came to just sort of a breaking point between me and my parents, is that you need to decide, you're not going to find that perfect person. I'm like, I know that. I'm not looking for the perfect person. I'm just looking for the right person for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it went both ways. I wasn't the right fit for a lot of these people either.
Mm-hmm.
I was declined and I was expecting to be declined. I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the choice.
Yeah, you don't think you're better than anyone. You're just,
yeah,
it's not a match. Yeah.
right. It's not a match. So, man, it was a journey. And this is when my parents and I started to clash a lot. There were times where you meet someone a few times, like you do go out on those dates,
Okay.
but then it just doesn't
Simmers
material.
out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
And then you maybe take a break before you try another suitor.
yeah. So that is something they also had to catch on to. Like, oh, it's the third date. That means you're getting married, isn't it? And they would start getting ahead of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And,
Getting a little bit too excited about.
Yeah. I've had friends who had 3 dates and then they got married. So my parents were watching all of my friends get married before me. And
Mm-hmm.
it was. It was a little funny because they were like, "Why are you the?" I mean, it was a constant comment every single night. "Why are you the last one left?" I'm like, "I'm not the last one left. You're just noticing the people who are getting married first,
Right.
you know?"
You're hyper aware of that because
Yeah,
that's what you want for me.
right.
So you're hyper focused on that. Yep.
So I've had to meet so many people this way that I've forgotten what the reasons were for those not working out. And this was such a long time ago. But you know what? I am so glad it didn't work out that way, because what those potential suitors and those situations required of me was not the authentic self that I was willing to present in that culture, in that society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, get married and have kids right away, and live with the guy's parents, most likely
After marriage.
after marriage. Because
Really? That's
yeah,
normal.
this is another sociological difference in the culture, is that when you marry, most of the time the sons have to take care of the parents, and the wife has to live, I mean, like, the couple has to live with the
And
parents.
take
And
care of
this
the.
isn't always the case, but there are exceptions to the rules, because some parents just live in the home country, but
if they're local.
My generation specifically was dealing with this whole aspect, and a lot of my girlfriends were like, I don't want to live with the guy's parents. I don't want them just being there all the time. This is insane. Just can't
What
we
I
have our
imagine,
privacy?
because so you, forgive me, sorry, you were born in the States?
I was born in the home country.
Okay.
I moved
most of your childhood, and then so I can imagine like
I was here as a baby. I was brought here as a baby.
And
grew up here.
Same as a lot of your friends that are your age. Okay, so you guys are more. Most of your entire life's been in this country where that's not an American norm necessarily.
Yeah.
To get married and then move in, and it's just assumed that you're taking care of your spouse's parents. So that probably was a conflicting pull, I'm sure, from like the expectation of your culture to like that's not what the rest of the folks outside of your immediate community are maybe doing. So
I know, and I would think about that. I had, friends who were outside of the culture, who got married and they were just by themselves, and I thought
had
that
their own place.
That this looks like such a treat.
Yeah,
and I think that was just one of the first things that I'm like, I don't think I'm meant to be with someone of my own culture and background or religion.
Because you were attracted to that a little bit.
I was attracted to being outside of that.
Yeah.
There was a whole adventure calling to me for so many years, and I didn't listen to my intuition. I just kept listening to my parents. And part of me just wanted them to be okay with who I was, because I felt like I had disappointed them so much at this point that I just wanted them to be okay with my choices, but it was just not working out that way at all. And
so now you're 30, and this is when you kind of hit this breaking point. It sounds
I hit
like
this breaking point, and psychologically, it just took a deep toll. Just working in this job that I don't like necessarily, I feel like I'm not at my potential. I had a novella published, but now it's out of print, and I had to do all this. Like, I was trying to develop myself in the oddest of circumstances, in the most suffocating of circumstances. I had so much creative energy in me that didn't have a place to go, that had no outlet, and I just,
but you could feel that.
Yeah.
Could you feel that creative energy, like wanting to go out into the world and be released? But it sounds like you were
dying to escape. I wanted to be away. I couldn't. Like, it was. I went into a depression of sorts, and that's when I started to hyperventilate. My body would break out into hives. My nasal passages would swell up, and each time this happened, it got worse and worse and worse. And the last time that it happened, I completely passed out, and when I woke up, I had to be injected with epinephrine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and that was my
body. Where were you? May I ask, like, were you at work when this happened? At home?
At home. I was at home. So I had a sibling come and rescue me.
Oh my goodness.
It was the most harrowing experience, and my parents just didn't know what to do with me at that point. Their only intention or their only concern was, this girl needs to get married, and she hasn't done that yet, and nothing else matters. And when I was going through anaphylaxis, they just didn't know how to understand it. Because at first I thought it was just something in my environment that's setting me off, dust or yellow jackets,
right,
or bees, but it was none
You're
of
getting
those
hives. You're reacting to something. Usually when I think hives, I think most of us think like an allergic reaction, right?
Yeah. Right. And I got tests done. I went to like 3 different allergy specialists, and they were all like, this is psychological. That's why we can't figure out a direct reason. And one of them sat me down, asked me detailed questions. They're like, it's your environment. It's your psychological environment. You need to make some changes.
You had doctors tell you this.
An allergy specialist is becoming a psychologist to me in that moment.
Wow.
And I'm like, you know what? You're right. And I already know it. And he's like, look, just make some changes and see how you feel. See if this still happens. And until then, take a Claritin every single day. Sorry. Yeah, no, it was funny. Because that's exactly how he
Until
said
you can move out of your parents' home, take Claritin.
Take Claritin. And yeah, no one could
Oh.
leave home. No woman could leave home. Like, this is Houston, Texas. You know, this is America, and we're still living like we're in the home country because none of us, it occurred to none of us to break the rules. As in, my group of friends, the young people in my community are so afraid of authority.
So no one else in your circle that you were close with had gone outside of
No,
this yet.
people went away for grad school, but they came right back. People went away for med school and came right back and obeyed their parents. And I would always think, why do they want to come back to their parents, or why do they want to come back here? So anaphylaxis was the earth-shattering sort of paradigm shift of my life, where I was called by the bigger forces out there to just get the hell out and make some changes and go after what I want.
So what change did you make?
So after my appointment with the doctor, I packed my bags. I got in touch, like, this friend of mine who was keeping track of me, like, in a very genuine way, like
checking in on
checking
you.
in
Yes.
on me
Was
at the time.
Was this friend aware of
Yeah,
what
he
you were
was
going
aware,
through? Okay.
and he was very worried about me at the time, as anyone would be, because I hadn't told very many people what was going on with me and why, because I just felt like I didn't have very many sympathetic places to go at the time, because everyone was so into following the rules. I was confiding in this one guy friend. He was like, and he was in Portland at the time.
Okay.
And he was like, hey, I am moving to San Francisco, and my lease isn't up for another 6 months, and you need to come take over, and you need to get the hell out of Texas, and you just need to come to Portland, and everything's gonna be fine. And I was like, you got a deal.
Okay, so you took over his lease.
I took over his lease.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I packed my bags. I booked a ticket right away. I went downstairs, and my parents were like, what the hell are you doing? I was like, I'm leaving. It was like kind of like that one moment in that one movie, The Jungle Book.
Yeah.
Where the kid leaves the wolf pack.
Yes.
And I thought, I'm leaving.
So you made this decision.
Yeah.
We're firm in this, and we're announcing this to your parents.
I wish I was a little more organized, because, usually I am organized about these things, about making big decisions like that. But I felt like I was so deep in the shackles.
Sometimes you can't be when you had a lot going on. You just gotta flee. You gotta go.
Right. So I was like, I'm leaving. I'm moving to Portland. And
had you been to Portland? Had you visited before?
I hadn't, but I had visited the Northwest very many times, because my family and I were here.
Oh yes, Washington State.
Washington
correct.
State for the first half of my life, like first few years of my life, and I had always envisioned being back here, even as whenever I would visit as a 15-year-old, 20-year-old. I always envisioned myself back in the Northwest. And that was the mothership. That was always going to be the mothership. And it was just by some bizarre synchronicity that my friend was here at the time. And he was like, you need to move back, or you need to come to Portland, and everything's going to work out with you. This is a completely different place, and you're going to fit right in. And he, so I told my parents, I'm moving, and I will figure out the rest as I go along. I had some savings, and I wasn't worried about getting a job at the time. I just needed to get the hell out. And so, yeah, I got on a plane the next day, and
just packed like your clothes and your personal belongings, so no like furniture or anything.
No furniture or anything. And my friend, he still had some stuff in the apartment that I could use.
Great.
And I would be able to add more stuff as I kept living there.
Right.
So yeah, as soon as I landed here, I knew that things were never going to be the same again.
Did you feel that you made a good decision for yourself?
Yes.
Right away.
It was a full body yes, as I call it.
Oh, it's wonderful.
Yeah. And so yeah, it was you know, opening myself up to a whole new world, just like how I wanted. I took up art, something I never thought I would do, like becoming an artist and having it work out the way it is right now. At this point, it's just been kind of
Surreal a little bit.
surreal,
Yeah.
beyond
So did you
anything.
did you pick up another marketing gig here and then or
Yeah,
how did this kind of play
yeah.
out with
I
working with finding art?
Yeah, I just I kept working marketing jobs,
Mhm.
uh freelancing and full time. And while I was doing that, I was writing a novel, working on a novel, still working on a novel, which takes time, by the way. And
Mhm.
you know, I re- I remember when I in the first year when I got here, I was like I was never in a place in my life where I could deliberately express myself the way I am now. And I was just doing whatever the hell I wanted. You know, I never have had that kind of freedom. And I'm not
So you're like 32 years old or something at this point?
yeah,
Or
31.
okay,
Yeah.
31 and for the first time in your life feeling like you can really do whatever you want and not feel like you have people breathing down your back
Yes.
judging your moves that are not they're not
Yes.
following the path they want
Right.
for you. Wow.
Yes. It's
That must have been invigorating to say the least.
yeah, empowering, freeing,
Mhm.
um, was a necessary part of my evolution. I feel so fortunate to have had this experience now, almost, almost a decade later. Looking back, I am just incredibly blessed and grateful for my life having gone in this direction despite a major relationship not working out.